Now, hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Focus, a special Africa news program on Switch TV, Kenya's #1 youth television. From right here in the middle of Kenya's capital, Nairobi. My name is Givas Maina. Our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dokas. Stories making our headlines.
World Health Organization suspends trial of chloroquine over safety concerns. Ethiopia plans to sell a 30 to 40% stake in its state-run telecoms monopoly to big telecom companies.
And now let's take a look at stories making headlines around the continent.
The Democratic Republic of Congo reported a fresh Ebola outbreak in its northwest in the country, already fighting an epidemic of the deadly fever in the east as well as surging number of coronavirus infections. The 11th Ebola outbreak in the vast Central African country's history comes just weeks before it had hoped to declare the end of the 10th in the east. Health Minister Eteni said that 4 people have already died from Ebola in the district of the northwest city of Mbandaka. The health minister said they will send the vaccine and medicine very quickly, adding that he planned to visit the site of the outbreak. Mbandaka is a transport hub on the Congo River with a population of more than 1 million. Equator province was previously hit by an Ebola outbreak between May and July 2018, in which 33 people died and 21 recovered from the disease. 145 Malawian men deported from South Africa amid coronavirus because they did not have resident permits arrive at Lilongwe's Kamuzu International Airport and are brought to a quarantine center to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The men have also undergone virus testing upon arriving back. Universities and high schools in Tanzania reopened despite a lack of clarity on the spread of coronavirus after the government decided to stop updating figures in April. New hand-washing stations were spotted on the campus of the University of Dar es Salaam, while crowded lecture halls made a mockery of social distancing. Some students are glad of the return and keen to pursue their studies, while others urge the government to follow up and check the prevention measures are being sufficiently respected. Cameroon's schools and universities reopen as the government weathers criticism over weak measures to combat the spread of coronavirus in one of the worst affected countries in sub-Saharan Africa.
Now, the World Health Organization now says it has temporarily suspended clinical trials of hydroxychloroquine as a potential treatment for COVID-19 being carried out across a range of countries as a precautionary measure. The decision came after the publication last week of a study in The Lancet indicating that using the drug of COVID-19 patients could increase the likelihood of drying, according to WHO Chief Tedros Ghebreyesus in a virtual press conference.
The executive group has implemented a temporary pause of the hydroxychloroquine arm within the Solidarity trial while the safety data is reviewed by the Data Safety Monitoring Board. The other arms of the trial are continuing. The executive group has implemented a temporary pause of the hydroxychloroquine arm within the Solidarity trial while the safety data is reviewed by the Data Safety Monitoring Board. The other arms of the trial are continuing. In many countries it has shown that after a certain number of cases, after a certain threshold, it moves like a bushfire, exponential. It did it in China, in Wuhan. It did it in many European countries. And it's doing it now in, as you said, in Brazil. It really moves fast. That's why we need to do everything to slow it. And the slowing is mainly in the social measures, social distancing measures that we take. And they have to be as really aggressive as possible.
20 years on from Zimbabwe's highly controversial land reform program, the ones of past are still strongly felt by black and white farmers alike. 2 decades ago, Mugabe seized more than 4,000 farms from the country's 4,500 white large-scale commercial farmers. He justified the land grabs as a way to correct historical wrongs by claiming back land that was forcibly taken from the blacks. Critics blame the land program for wreaking havoc on the agriculture sector.
2 decades ago, Mugabe seized more than 4,000 farms from the country's 4,500 white large-scale commercial farmers. He justified the land grabs as a way to correct historical wrongs by claiming back land that was forcibly taken from the blacks. Critics blame the land program for wreaking havoc on the agriculture sector, a mainstay of the economy. 80-year-old Isobel Simons and her late husband lost the 722-hectare Zimbabwe farm 2 decades ago to Mugabe's controversial land reforms.
Which I could cry. It was my home for 47 years.
Food shortages experienced over most of the post-land reform years are widely blamed on the loss of white farmers. The coronavirus pandemic has only worsened the shortages. 2 successive droughts have stunted agricultural harvest, leaving 7.7 million, half the population, food insecure.
And I don't hate white farmers by any standards. But that does not stop me from claiming what is rightfully mine. I'm
challenge ngeri ma tractor. Yes, wawana mbeu, wawana D. Yekuti utange basa. But tractor kama kuma tractor. Tractor nenge chidedzera zvayo. Tizi pamwe wasati warwana.
According to the world, 56 of the country's 60 districts are experiencing crisis hunger, and the virus pandemic risks driving people into deeper desperation. The land issue almost derailed the negotiations with Britain that led to the birth of Zimbabwe in 1980. Ultimately, a deal was struck that the new government will not embark on any land reforms in the first decade in power. Zimbabwe's government insists it will only pay compensation for improvements on the farms.
Now we switch gears to Ethiopia. Change finally seems to be coming to Ethiopia's stunted telecom sector, one of the last closed telecoms market in the world. The government regulator recently invited firms to submit expressions of interest for 2 new telecoms licenses that would break up the monopoly enjoyed by Ethio Telecom.
Ethiopia plans to sell a 30 to 40% stake in its state-run telecommunication monopoly to big telecommunication companies and will split the company in 2 to spur competition. Selling stakes in its lucrative telecommunication monopoly and other assets could open Ethiopia, which is one of the largest untapped markets, to huge potential investment by firms willing to work with the government, still word of private enterprise.
For a business like ours, telecom is crucial, and it is the most difficult challenge we face.
Internet ነው ከዚህ የበለጠ ትልቅ የምንለው እንደምንሰማው ከሆነ ያው ማለት የተሻለ አገልግሎት
I have heard that many countries have a better connection compared to us.
ምናምን እንደዚህ አይነት ሀገሮች እንዳሉ እናውቃለን። በላይ ድርጅት ሲሆን
If there is more than one telecom company, then they will be in competition. So I am hoping it will improve when others join the market.
The stakes in Ethio Telecommunication will be allocated to firms that are ranked top 10 in the industry globally. South African telecommunication groups MTN and Vodacom have both recently expressed interest in Ethiopia, and so may be potential investors. The stakes is a part of a raft of measures announced by Abiy, who is a former army officer who became prime minister in April, saying a new start was necessary to end political instability in a country of 100 million people, where 40% are aged under 15. Foreign companies have been waiting for Ethiopia to open its state monopolies.
Away from Ethiopia, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that places of worship will reopen when the country moves into a level 3 of a 5-tier coronavirus lockdown next month.
We have therefore determined that as part of the regulations for alert level 3, the current restrictions on congregational worship will be eased in a carefully measured way. Churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, and other recognized places of worship may resume services but these will be limited in size to 50 people or less, depending on the space available. Our religious leaders will be recognized as essential religious frontline workers for purposes of spiritual counseling to members of their faith organizations. As we worked tirelessly to heal the divisions of the past, so too will our united action bring us healing from this pandemic. May God continue to bless South Africa and protect her people.
And that story from South Africa takes us to a short commercial break. Don't go too far. So much more coming your way. Coming up.
A massive wall of sand engulfed the capital city of Niger, causing a momentary halt.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Focus. A Kenyan who lost his wife to cancer last week was left stranded by the roadside watching over his late wife's remains after a run-in with police. Charles Mwenda was stranded with his wife's corpse after his relatives were turned away at the border of Tharaka-Nithi and Meru and forced back to Malindi, where they came from. His distress brings to the force lack of information on guidelines, both in transportation of a corpse during the COVID-19 pandemic period, as well as the burial of a COVID-19 positive patient.
It was a message of distress that he shared on social media platforms, giving an account of his journey from Malindi in Kilifi County to his wife's last resting place in Meru County. Charles Mwenda, who lost his wife to cancer last week, was left stranded by the roadside, watching over his late wife's remains after a run-in with the police. Mwenda, who hails from Tigania, Meru County, said he had traveled from Malindi on Wednesday, 27th of May. He was in the company of several family members who were headed to Meru for his late wife's funeral, a burial that they never made to the last minute.
Polisi wale walikuwa hapo wakatuambia mpaka mwili ushuke kurudishwe ama turudi ama tushukishe mwili. Mimi na watoto wangu na mama tunafanya nini tukuje tuzike mwili, lakini watoto wangu ni wadogo, hawezi kuja na mama hawezi kuja kwa sababu kulikuwa usiku, kulikuwa kama kitu saa 5 kufika hapa na kulikuwa kunanyesha. Sasa huwezi ende kuchukua watoto uriski ukuja na watoto mpaka hapa. Nikaambia mama arudi Malindi, mimi nitachukua hiyo jukumu.
Prior to making the journey home, Mwenda claims he had obtained all the necessary documents and had even undergone a coronavirus test just to be sure. With the requisite documents in hand, Mwenda crossed police barriers from Malindi until he got to Meru Tharaka-Nithi border, where all hell broke loose. Mwenda, who was left with his late wife's body, was ushered into a waiting police vehicle. He claimed that police officers threatened to take him to a 14-day quarantine if he did not comply. The officers then dropped him off at the Kanjai police station, a long distance from his home. His late wife's body was also offloaded from the police vehicle and placed by the roadside.
Lori yenyewe ndio hiyo, maji imejaa kwa hiyo lori. Sinaona lori imefunguliwa juu. Ikaingia ile maji ya mvua nikaanza kutumwagia maji tena. Sasa mimi hiyo kitendo si kitendo kizuri. Na vile nimefanyiwa na serikali ya Meru si vizuri.
That day, the entire night, he spent it all in the cold, with the casket containing his wife's remains keeping him company. When it started raining, Mwenda covered the coffin with a piece of tarp before pulling it under a lorry that had been parked at the station. The next day, he was picked by a friend at around 6 a.m. and managed to get home to give his late wife her delayed, dignified send-off, albeit without his 3 children, family and friends. Mwenda's tribulations bring to the fore a lapse in guidelines for persons transporting corpses of their loved ones for burial from one county to the other.
We did not find it necessary to allow the whole 3 people who had traveled from Malindi for the burial. However, we were able to provide transport for the body and facilitate one close relative of the deceased.
And when it comes to burial of patients who die of coronavirus, the Ministry of Health says the funeral should be conducted by the family members under the supervision of health officials. The protocols forbid relatives from touching or kissing the body. Relatives and friends are allowed to conduct the burial, but only under the watch of public health officials. Religious and cultural burial practices are permitted as long as they do not involve contact with the body. The ministry has forbidden embalming to avoid excessive manipulation of the body. Personnel handling the bodies must use facial protection such as face shields, goggles and medical masks and seal all body fluid leaks. Viewing of bodies of COVID-19 victims in the mortuary before it is transported for burial is forbidden. Instead, relatives can identify their loved one's body using digital means like photos of the face and other identifiers. Dana Rose, Switch TV.
A sad moment of events in Tharaka Nithi. Now, away from that, a massive wall of sand engulfed the capital city, Niamey, of the Western African nation of Niger, leaving the residents scared. Now, the videos and images of the large plumes of dust shared on social media have left netizens terrified, and some amazed too. The videos and images show the large wall of sand appearing on the edge of the city, and it looks like a moment from an apocalyptic movie. It ended up causing a momentarily halt in the air traffic. It's after the torrential rains arrived that the sky finally cleared up. Niger is known for frequent sandstorms that sweep Saharan sand through the country and out toward the Atlantic Ocean. They typically hit from January to April in what is known as the Harmattan season. According to the World Meteorological Organization, the storms usually occur when strong winds lift large amounts of sand and dust from bare, dry soils into the atmosphere. They are usually caused by thunderstorms. From Niger back to South Africa. Thousands of people are struggling to survive in South Africa, unable to earn a living under the strict lockdown rules aimed at preventing the spread of coronavirus. Some help has come from unexpected source: game farmers who are left with surplus meat after culling their animals.
Culling. It happens every year on this game farm to keep antelope numbers under control. But during the coronavirus outbreak, unlike other years, none of this meat is sold for profit. It all goes to struggling families who live nearby.
We cannot have access to what we have, and then just around the corner, people, through no fault of their own, are going hungry. So it's actually an easy decision. It's the right thing to do.
These Samaritans want to stay anonymous to avoid problems with the local authorities. The fear is that going through the proper channels would result in delays, political grandstanding, or possible corruption. The game farmers in the north of the country donate the meat, which a local shop owner repackages at his own cost.
We don't want any interference. We've been doing it for 20 years. We've stepped it up by doing meat at the moment. We want to keep it sustainable. And we want to make sure that the food gets to where it's most needed.
A local charity distributes the food to a nearby settlement. Many people are unemployed, and those with casual jobs cannot work because of the COVID-19 restrictions.
Lockdown has really given us a negative impact in terms of poverty. Most people now, they are really suffering.
Each package contains some game meat and vegetables. It provides much-needed help for this mother and her son, who live on a government grant of just over $20 per month.
This food parcel is very important for us to survive, because we wouldn't have been able to without getting at least a bit of meat.
As the lockdown drags on, the benefactors will keep going for as long as they can. To date, the program feeds around 200 families, but every day the call for help continues to rise.
WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus now says that the UN organization will continue supporting DRC in tackling Ebola after the Democratic Republic of Congo announced a new outbreak of the virus in the west of the country. DR Congo reported a fresh Ebola outbreak in its northwest on Monday, the latest health emergency for a country already fighting an epidemic of deadly fever in the east, as well as a surging number of coronavirus infections. The 11th Ebola outbreak in the vast Central African country's history comes just weeks before it had hoped to declare the end of the 10th in the east.
Our country is still facing another outbreak of the Ebola virus in the Equity province. This is the 11th epidemic in our country.
Celle-ci est la 11e épidémie dans notre pays. Depuis le 31 mai 2020,
since 31st May 2020, 8 cases of hemorrhagic fever, including 2 live positives, 2 suspected cases, 1 positive death, and 3 probable deaths, have been reported in the town of Manaka Health Zone.
In the early morning, a small group of protesters stands outside the Bargeville Primary School in Cape Town to protest the reopening of schools. The Western Cape Town remains one of the country's hotspots with an ever-increasing number of infections. In other parts of the country, the resumption date has been postponed a week to June 8.
The
headaches I had were intense. I had to take pain medication in the mornings and again in the afternoons. It wasn't a nice experience. I also don't think it will be nice for children to experience something like this. The back pain was also there, so it won't be nice for a child if it already hurts as an adult. It won't be nice for a child to experience it.
But yes,
we also need the schools to open, but it cannot open now. Even if it means that our children have to repeat a grade, even if it means that a special curriculum has to be worked out for our grade 12s and for our grade 7s, the Department of Education should look into those things.
Now that story from Cape Town, South Africa, concludes our program here on Africa Focus. But keep the conversation going on our social media platform, Switch TV Kenya on Twitter and on Facebook. Send your SMSs to 22999 free of charge. My name is Givasumaina. Our sign language interpreter has been Tracy Dokas. Until next time, have a great time and thank you for watching.